Welcome to the Desert Sanctuary with Karl and Laura Forehand.
Often when we have doubts about religion or simply want to ask questions, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert.
We would like to invite you to join our sanctuary, the Desert Sanctuary.
We've tried to pick guests that would resonate with and challenge us and our fellow seekers here in the desert.
We believe that a key to the journey is to keep asking good questions, and we believe that all stories are sacred.
Our hope is that you will find life and healing for your body and mind, and that you will be able to be who you are and be who you are.
And now, here is our show. Hi, welcome to the Desert Sanctuary. I'm Laura Forehand, and I'm here with Karl. And I guess I'm going to be kind of kicking this episode off. It's Christmas Eve as we are recording, and Christmas has kind of changed for us a little bit over the years because all our kids are grown adults now. One is living on the other side of the world, and the other two have their own families that they're, doing family traditions with and things like that. So it feels weird.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, it just surreal. I don't know what the word is really, but it's just kind of an odd feeling that it's Christmas Eve and there's not really any big production that's going to take place either tonight or tomorrow for us. So
now, I wrote about that and a little bit this week because talking about the show, that we put on and how we did that. For 20 years, there was always some push to do. We did Hanging of the Green, which is a little ceremony we found out and did. And we would almost always have a Christmas Eve service.
Right.
And even in between the two churches and then after the churches, when we'd step down, we'd always go to the Christmas Eve service.
Right.
And when I was young, we went to my grandma's house.
Yeah.
Which is a little different.
Yeah.
But, you kind of get enamored with those candlelit services and things.
Yeah.
And then after the first 3 or 4, it's like, well, this is kind of the same old thing. And tonight we watched the Cowboys, and they're having church across the street.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I don't feel like I miss anything. I don't have to get dressed up and go out in the cold.
Right. No, I don't feel like I'm missing anything other than, like, I'm missing that family aspect of it. But we will be doing, we just do ours later because we want to kind of honor the fact that our children want to do their own traditions with their small children. And, that was something that our kids were a little bit older before we realized we needed to maybe stay home for Christmas. And of course, then when you got into the ministry, that was kind of a demand on you that you needed to be there for Christmas and Christmas Eve services and things. So as far as like going back home, that was really hard to do. But
and we're kind of waiting for Tuesday, really, because Tuesday is the day after Christmas.
Right.
And you want to do a little shopping.
That's when I do my Christmas shopping.
But I also we have to get a refrigerator.
Yeah.
To figure out what to do about the garbage disposal. We're trying to get a car started and all those kind of things. But we're kind of waiting until after this weekend, which, since Christmas is on Monday, it doesn't end till Tuesday morning. Right. So
yeah,
we're hopefully getting some things done that we've been needing to do for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, Christmas Eve is just... It's just getting used to a new way of doing things. That's all. And it's really not that it's new because, I think we've done Christmas after Christmas for probably, 5-6 years now, probably ever since Holland was born, We
just, after we got out of the ministry, we tuned it down quite a bit.
Yeah.
And said, let's don't give as many gifts. We're not going to shop and fight the crowds and all that kind of stuff. It's just, we toned it back a lot after we got out of the ministry. And then for a while we watched Christmas Eve services, but then we got involved in the Christmas Eve service and then, do communion, hold the communion plates, and it's just it's another job,
Yeah.
and it's we finally just said, why don't we just stay home and enjoy it?
Yeah.
Kick back and do a podcast, maybe.
So here we are, right?
Here we are.
And so we're basically going to be, or I'm going to be, talking to you tonight. We do have our Christmas libations that we're enjoying while we do this podcast.
Yeah.
So, I guess we are having a little Christmas cheer.
Little Christmas cheer.
So that's all good. And I think I've eaten my weight in candy over this weekend.
Some kind of turtle thing today. It was a little brownie square.
Yeah, one of my third grade students, actually not mine, but I actually, when we switch, and
it had like 3 different cookies in it or something. It
Yeah.
was kind of a cookie top, had chocolate chips and caramel, and
it's like a turtle kind of chocolate chip cookie.
It was like a turtle, but plus a little bit.
Yeah.
It was so good. I ate 2 of them.
Oh, are there any left?
Maybe not.
I don't. That's okay.
There might be one.
I've been enjoying my favorite treat for the Christmas season are Queen Anne's chocolate covered cherries, and yeah, so I can sit and eat a whole box, but I definitely eat, like, they come in like 2 trays to a box. And one tray, it has like 5 of them, and I can definitely eat those 5 within the time span of a day. So
yeah, I made a batch of no-bake cookies.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
Just the cocoa and peanut butter and something about
those turned out pretty good.
Really, something about it is there's a bunch of sugar in it.
Yeah.
And cocoa and vanilla and all that stuff. It's good.
Yeah, that's what makes it good, though. But
Indeed.
Anyway, so for this podcast episode, I'm going to just kind of be talking to you, interviewing you, if you will. So, usually when you tell your story, you start like 7-8 years ago when you started deconstructing, when you kind of, and I don't even know that if that's when you stepped away from the pulpit. Were you actually deconstructing then, or was it, because we were still going to church and things like that? But you probably were. But I wanted to go back, I guess, even farther and, maybe help our listeners understand kind of your story, because we've been talking so much to people and their stories and how they were, maybe raised in their denominations or, their religious upbringing or whatever. So I thought we would start there with you. So kind of like you tell our guests, in whatever detail and wherever you want to start, tell us about Karl. Tell us about Joey.
Yeah, so I remember being, 4 and 5 years old. I remember a little bit about that because, it's about the time I got glasses. I couldn't see. I was sitting 3 inches from the TV and things like that. And so I got these big old glasses. And then after that, it was just continually doing different things with my eyes, trying to get everything straightened out. I had a little bit of a lazy eye, and then I'm just pretty blind.
Yeah.
Actually. And so from that time forward, I wore glasses. I don't remember that bothering me as a child, but I do remember, I'm thin, I'm spindly and little, and that made it tough. When I was about 7, we kind of moved to an inner city place, and I remember some things happening there, and some of it came up in therapy and so on. But we went to an inner city school where it was, if I remember right, it was just elementary, but we were kind of in a group with 2nd through 4th graders on recess, I think, and before school and so on.
Yeah.
And I had a friend, one of them looked like Hattie Doody, and the other one was a black kid, and I used to smell his hair because he had product in his hair. It smelled like strawberries. But the 4th graders would pick on us, and this guy's name was Steve Davis, same as the white quarterback for Oklahoma.
Oh,
And so they would try to mess with us, and this kid would go punch him, and then he would run, and he was so fast, he'd run all over the playground, they couldn't catch him, and then the bell would ring and we'd go in. But it was kind of a rough area, and I remember one time my little brothers and sisters, I had to take them to school, and I'm 7 years old. I'm in second grade.
And just so people know, like, you have a sister who's about a year younger than you are, and then below her, Monty is how much age difference is between
He's about 3 years or 2.5 years younger than me.
So by the time you're 7, you have a sister and a brother.
Right.
Okay.
And I had skipped first grade, but then my mom held me back when we went to that school, and then my sister skipped a grade. So
you guys were the same
grade.
We
ended up being in the same grade, but my brother was in kindergarten. But the one time it was icy in Oklahoma, in the inner city, we had to go from a babysitter from next door, and I had to walk several blocks. I remember just crying and thinking, I can't do this. I shouldn't have.
You're 7.
I'm 7. I don't think I should be in charge of this. And then another time we walked to another babysitter, and another girl, a kid, came off of a porch and ran up and grabbed my sister's glasses and just took off running with them. I had to chase her down, and I made her give them back.
Yeah.
And that's where I saw my first dog get run over and some things like that. So
those things are traumatic. Those things are traumatic.
That area is one that kind of sticks out of my mind, because several things like that happened. But then it was also when I remember that somehow my mom got me in a church, in a big church. And none of my other brothers and sisters were there. But I remember understanding what the pastor was saying enough for it to scare me. And I told my mom I wanted to walk down the aisle. Now, when I was a little kid, I would hide under the coffee table when people came over. I mean, I was very, very shy.
Right.
But somehow,
part of that could have been your eyesight too, you know? I mean, I'm sure you were shy, but part of that could have been just your eyesight, not being able to see and really know what what was in front of you, you know?
But somehow I the pastor's message, I understood that I needed to get saved or something. There was a lot of fear involved and things like that, so I was emotional. But not that I really understood it, and not that I could really name anything that I had done wrong. Not much of anything that I had done wrong for God to hate me and all that, but somehow, his message got through, and I wanted to get saved. And then I think a week later, maybe that night, I was baptized. And so that, from that point, in a year or two, my dad had an affair sometime when I was very young, and a child was born to that, and we didn't know about that till much later. Much later in life.
Like we were married and had preteen kids by the time you found out about that.
Yeah, and that child that was born has already passed away.
Yeah.
So we did get to meet her and so on, but there was a lot of stuff like that going on. By the time I was 6, it's the 1970s. I don't know a lot about the other stuff that happened behind the scenes and so on, but shortly thereafter we moved to a suburb of Oklahoma City. It's Moore, Oklahoma, where all the tornadoes come through. And we went to a public school for 1 year, and then my dad's boss talked him into going to this private school, and my mom would teach. She wasn't really qualified to teach, but she would teach, and that helped with tuition, I imagine.
Right.
And so we went to the private school, but it happened to be at an independent fundamentalist Baptist church. And I don't even know for years and years and years until recently, I didn't know a lot about the IFB, but I do know that Jack Hiles came and preached to us, and he's the pastor of the mother church for independent fundamentalists in Hammond, Indiana. And
is he still alive? Does he still preach there?
I believe he's still alive. But him and his son have gotten into a lot of trouble, and they're highly focused on. But that that church had a lot of that. It had a fiery preachers.
Sure.
Later on we figure out the preacher and his son are in all kinds of weird business deals and things like that. But while we were there, it was just mainly, I went to Bible classes. We had, Bible verse drills, and they would get buses and just haul people in from all over the place for Sunday school. And so we had all that happening, but I didn't take a lot of it in. I think it was more subconscious than conscious. I just knew, when the nursery workers had belts, we just, my dad didn't seem to be around a lot, and my mom was working there in the nursery and things, and she didn't notice. But we would just escape. We'd jump out the bathroom window and go play and run away, and come back and then accept whatever consequences there were, because it was just, it did never resonate with us. There's nothing compelling about all this. And we stayed there till about 8th grade. And I don't think I was thinking about God at all during that time. But there'd been a lot of input into my system, a lot of subconscious things that happened over the years, and went to live in a rural area where, I went on wheat harvest the first summer I was there. I, learned how to work hard.
Yeah.
Worked at the co-op there in town every summer. Worked at a grocery store during the year, and then on into college. So, I could probably care less about God during that time. Didn't think about it. But I did go to a church where this pastor named Bill, he was one of my friend's dad. By the way, it was one of the friends that taught me how to drink hard liquor.
Nice.
And stuff like that. But we would work at the grocery store. We'd come on Friday nights, go out to this M&B club. We called it Music and Boxing, because it was just dancing. It's out of the lake, and it was just dancing and fighting and all kinds of stuff like that. But then we go there, and sometimes I would go with my mom to church. And this guy Bill, Can
I stop you for a second? So did you go to church because your mom made you go, or was there something that you felt compelled to go continue to go to church? Because you said, God was not at the forefront of any of your thinking. So was it your mom that was like?
Yeah, I don't know, because the music director's son and the pastor's son, and then another friend of one of those pastor's sons lived out at the lake. So all three of those guys were in my class, and they were in my circle. So it was kind of, however they got us to church. We had a little Sunday school where this lady tried to teach us, and we were horrible to her. Yeah. And nothing got
So it was more
through.
like your friends were there, and so it was kind of a way for you guys to hang out,
We'd sit on the back row, and, but some of the, his easier version of grace and love and things like that kind of got through, and he carved chess pieces and stuff, and we were always trying to make a go-kart. We never got it made in his garage, but so it was just some communal stuff of just being there.
Sure.
I don't know that any of it stuck, except maybe that softer side of how it could be. Right. So I graduated and went to tech school, and I wanted to be a computer programmer, and tech school was then at Oklahoma State Tech in Okmulgee, Oklahoma. It's a real odd mix, and I say when I wrote in the book, I said it was some of the rawest people I've ever met. There was black people from the south side of Chicago. Yeah. There were these delinquent people. this guy walked into my dorm room from Tulsa. These Tulsa kind of delinquent people. He walked in and asked me. He'd been in my car with me, and he came and asked for my key, and he went down and took my stereo and ran off with it. And of course, he denied it. But anyway, there was just a bunch of those kind of people, and then there were Native Americans that were pretty raw. And so I remember a basketball game that was like no blood, no foul.
Oh, wow.
Was really rough. And, but there was nothing spiritual there either. I walked into a church one time and was kind of touched by something, kind of understood love a little better. But I didn't go back. And then other than that, there was nothing, in college that was spiritual or moving or godly. There's one Christian group, I think it was Fellowship of Christian Athletes, but every so often someone would steal their offering money when they were coming back from FCA, and it was that kind of environment,
right?
But anyway, I probably didn't think about anything spiritual until maybe we started dating. And I started thinking about having a family, and I probably should,
Isn't that what a lot of people do, though? I mean, really, I think there's something about, especially maybe not when you get married, but especially like when you start having a family. All of a sudden people are just like, oh, we should be going to church. We need to raise our child in the church. That seems to be a common thread with a lot of people. Anyway, go ahead.
Just look at where we were when you and I met. We were in a dance club.
Nothing wrong with that.
No. But we weren't...
we both had grown up kind of in the church, but we weren't necessarily going to church. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that I was... I think I was okay with that, but for whatever reason, maybe it was some sort of programming on your part, where you felt like, well, I've got to provide, I've got to be the spirit, kind of some of that stuff that maybe you didn't think had really gotten in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I got to be the spiritual leader of the home and all that kind of stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, so I was trying to figure out where should I go? When we moved to Omaha, eventually we moved to Omaha, I started attending a Baptist church, and just because that's what I knew. And it was a block and a half. No, it was a few blocks down from our apartment where we lived there on 96th Street. And, things started to click, I guess. It just seemed like, there's a couple of younger people like us. There's a class for young adults, young couples.
Yeah.
That we'd go to, and several men that were deacons who were about my age, and so it felt like a club or a family or something that we could get involved in. Then, as I think just over the years, there was one church in Texas that we attended for a while, but that in Omaha. Real quickly, we moved into teaching classes and working with the youth and things like that. And then I wanted to finish my bachelor's degree and found Grace College of the Bible, Grace University now. Or maybe
Is it even still
it's
around?
not in existence anymore.
I don't even know if it's around anymore.
But it was kind of a Mennonite-based, Bible-based college. And so... even though I didn't have any intentions about my spiritual life, the defaults were always this Bible-based, fundamentalist, evangelical.
Right.
And unfortunately, I drug you into that. and
let me just speak to that for a second, because, I was just naive, and so I honestly was just like, all right, whatever. So it's not like you really drug me, but I also was very unaware of all of that evangelical side of it. because I remember a lot of times just being like, even when you told me, I just feel like I've been called into the ministry, I was just like, okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, nothing ever like really ruffled my feathers a whole lot. I think I just was super naive and had no idea what I was going to get into.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, all the way up to there, and of course, the next step from that is that, starting to have that religious training and how to understand the Bible and things like that. I just naturally, like I do, I think, well, I've learned something. I got to tell somebody else about it. Mm-hmm. And they gave me kind of a natural progression to just become licensed and be a pastor and move on down the road from that.
Right.
In 1997, we quit my computer job and we went to a little tiny town and started pastoring a church.
Yeah.
And, business-wise, all of those went pretty well. Mm-hmm. But I think the thing for me is there was never any big event. There's no, no one ever molested me. No, no one ever, did anything dramatic to me. Mm-hmm. It was just all this kind of trauma that would drug along from life, and then looking back, thinking, I think part of the anguish for me is, why didn't I dig a little deeper? Why didn't I ask more questions? Why didn't I challenge this a little more instead of, because, I started my story saying, I'm a little guy with thick glasses, skinny and little, and I want to fit in. And that was what I was trying to do most of my life. I would figure out what's the characteristics of people that belong and how can I fit in. I mean, even when I was a pastor, I would go play golf with the guys, and try to blend in to that community, whatever it was. It was golf there. It was hunting at the third one, second one. Anyway.
Well, I do. Say? Well, I'll see if I can remember what I was going to say. But, I think that's why it's so important to realize that, trauma is very subjective. And, what is trauma to one person may not be to another. But if it's trauma to you, it is valid. And, I just wonder how much of, kind of the things that were maybe quote unquote little traumas, just, we spiritualize that. And so, or we think that, well, if we just go to church more, we just pray more, we just, give more time and money to the church, then God will somehow heal us and those things will go away rather than dealing with them. So I don't know that you really had it in you to dig a little deeper, because I think when you're kind of raised in that evangelical mindset that you just are, you get really good at stuffing that stuff down and just going, well, maybe if I just do more of the churchy kind of stuff, then everything will be okay. I don't know. I don't mean to put words in your mouth.
Yeah,
that's just what I'm thinking.
Like the Christmas Eve service, get a little hit of dopamine from a good experience, and it feels a little better, and so now we're happy again with ourselves, and everybody ought to come to this, and you kind of get those feelings. But I wish there was a counseling option available when I got my bachelor's in whatever it was, BS and Human Resources and Bible and stuff. There was a counseling option, and I wish at that time I would have went further and gotten that, because I started working on my MDiv, Master's in Divinity, and never finished it. But I wish I would have became a counselor at that point, at least to heal myself.
But I wonder, because what kind of counseling training were you going to be getting? You were going to be getting evangelical Bible-based counseling training.
That's probably true.
And, I think what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that, because I do think you have a desire to be a counselor but in no way, shape, or form a Christian counselor.
Right.
And that, had you gone that route, that is what you would have been trained in.
Yeah. And even in that, so in that denomination, what we're talking about covers eastern Nebraska. And so there's a lot of small towns in eastern Nebraska and a few big ones. But out of all of those churches, if I start talking about, well, let's deal with the men and their addictions, and
you tried to do that at our last church,
and they refer me to one guy, one pastor who's into some of that. He's kind of into that. Maybe there's no concerted effort. There's no overarching plan,
right?
And it may be different now. They may be waking up finally, but it's after there's been all of this abuse from youth pastors, and that was the Southern Baptist. So I think trauma for me came in little bits and pieces. I think my family didn't talk about issues like that, things that matter.
I think that was a generational thing.
Maybe they were definitely boomers, I think.
Yeah, and I just really wonder.
But also, my dad had an affair.
Yeah.
There was some shame.
Sure.
There, and he had another affair when I was in high school, and so we knew about that one. But we didn't sit down and talk about it.
Right.
We just went on with life.
And I remember, we specifically went back one Thanksgiving because your dad was gonna sit all you kids down, and your dad was not in the best of health at that time, and I think he was kind of wanting to unburden himself, come clean because he wasn't in good health. But I just remember that Thanksgiving came and went, and he never really talked to you guys. And like you said, the shame was so deep.
And actually, my mom had to write us a letter after that because he couldn't do it. He couldn't come clean after all of that,
Right.
So it was a lot of that, and we got mixed up in a multi-level marketing group somewhere in the middle of all that. Was kind of an odd mixture of Christianity and marketing and Republican politics and everything all mixed together, and it was something I kind of like to forget. Yeah. And most days I do. I don't think about that too much. But that also had an impact, and it's probably where I first got political, and then got a little more vocal about some of my religious stuff and so on. But, and then of course, several years ago, in 2015, 2016, we started deconstructing. And when we did, if I'd say there's one mistake that people make in deconstructing is especially pastor types and people that have done ministry before. And a lot of people do this in coaching. A coach will help them get through some stuff, and they'll go, okay, well, I could be a coach. And that's what they end up doing. And pastors, end up pretty quickly, after they start deconstructing, start discovering things, they start teaching again. They want to run a group. And we have done some of that and pulled back from some of that and learned some lessons, things like that. But the mistake people make is not getting better. Not taking the time to get better first. And, already in the desert, in the deconstructing progressive circles, we've had issues. Yeah. Right? And it's, people still dragging that same DNA, that same proclivity from evangelicalism and from other trauma they've experienced in their life. Yeah. I was excited, though, when we had this Leaning Forward conference because, there's an incident that happened a few months before that helped me realize how abuse survivors are treated, so on. We decided to amplify the voices of women in our conference, Leaning Forward. and
specifically who have experienced trauma in religious circles.
In religious trauma. So, but it was so exciting to do that and do a lot of hard work behind the scenes, to make all of that happen and to let them kind of run the agenda and put their voices out there. It's exciting for me. I think I'd like to see more of that in the world,
So do you feel like, I mean, I know what my answer is to this question, but do you feel like there's an end to your healing or I don't know if healing's the right word, but like there's an end, I guess I'm just going to say to your healing journey, or do you feel like, there's always layers to uncover and discover and maybe heal further?
Yeah, I think you can definitely get to a point where you function better.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And to where, like we could say, we don't react as much, we respond more, we talk more, we say we're sorry sooner, and always said that's a sign that some trauma has been healed, but I don't know if it ever ends, and I don't know if your deconstruction ends either. I think when you say, okay, I'm done deconstructing or I'm done healing, then that's kind of a troublesome statement.
How so? How would you? Why do you think?
Because if you say I'm done healing, then you're going to go back to try to do life without as many guardrails, and you're going to get hurt again, or you're going to hurt somebody. And I think you always just need to be cognizant of, what's a question I'm trying to deconstruct, and but also, what is that about when I blew up yesterday? Why did I blow up? Why did I feel all anxious when it wasn't really something to be anxious about?
Well, is that really a fair statement? I mean, obviously, if you feel anxious, I think that there's a reason why we feel anxious. Yeah. I don't think that's because there's no reason to it.
It's not apparent.
Yeah, it's not apparent.
Why I got that? I can't see it at the time.
Right.
I don't know why it was.
Right. But I do think that's a good thing to reflect on when you feel like you're anxious or you lash out or whatever. And I mean, I'm speaking for myself too. That's something I constantly will then go back and go, okay, where's this kind of coming from, sort of thing.
But so as I sit here kind of with the church to my back out the window, and I could, if people go to the Christmas Eve service and get that hit, they feel that dopamine rush, they feel the is oxytocin,
sure,
that love drug, kind of in them. They feel it. I mean, that's fine. I think for me, if I keep doing that, what that does is only just gives me that initial hit, helps me forget about the things I need to work on, and I don't spend the quiet time and the reflective time and the searching time to ask tougher questions and do the hard work of healing. So when you and I were not only attending services but leading them and organizing them and so on, there was very little time to slow down and even explore those things.
Right.
We just get a quick hit that drugs us for a little while, and then we have to go back. So,
yeah. So you're still continuing to heal. I think that's a fair statement, and I think that same thing about myself too. Is that there's probably always going to be layers that unravel at times when I am like, oh, I thought everything was okay or whatever, and then something happens, and but we are, I feel, more equipped to to kind of handle those things as they come up. So kind of where do you see the trajectory? I can't say that word. Trajectory. I think I was trying to say it without the R, without the TR blend there. But where do you see the direction of, your personal spirituality going?
I don't know. I really don't know. I had, I don't know how many books there are over there, probably 20. I committed to reading 100 books, so I started in January or in December, and I'm about through the second one. So, but these are, wild things that I could never see myself, kind of primarily
that being
committed to,
right?
Like yoga or whatever. Because I'm going to read the. I can't think of the names right now, but like the Egyptian Book of the Dead and some things like that. I want to see all sides, and a lot of times when I see those different sides of religion or belief systems or whatever you want to call those things, a lot of times there'll be truths that come through that and will help me kind of navigate my life and how I deal with stresses and things like that. So I'm kind of just excited to keep exploring.
And how do you respond to people? We still live in a small town, and your family, for the most part, is still on the more religious side of things. So how do you respond when people seem as if they don't really understand what you're doing? Not that you owe anybody an explanation, but if people came in our house and saw the myriad of different books that you have and that you're reading, and they were like, "What in the world? What are you doing here?" I mean, how do you respond to people that just would question, your spiritual path?
Yeah, I would say for the most part they don't. But, like I was home at my mom's birthday, I think.
It was like a year ago.
Yeah, and they said, my sister-in-law said, let's, shouldn't we all just go to church with your mom? And I said, well, I'm not going. And, I said, give me something to do with getting the meal ready, and I'll do that.
Yeah.
And, of course, she didn't argue with me, and my mom and them never brought it up, so... that's one of the good things about your family not talking about anything, But I think generally I talk about what I'm interested in pursuing, what I'm looking into, and of course, the first reaction out of an evangelical is always, "Well, be careful."
Right.
You got to be careful with that. What were you going to say?
I don't remember. Well, I think that just goes back to, if we don't talk about it, then, we don't have to. Like, it's scary. Yeah. It's scary.
Well, the birthday before that, they said, we decided, when I came home, we decided we're not going to talk about politics or religion. I said, well, we did, huh? That must have been before I got here. I don't remember having a vote.
Yeah. Which, in a way, I guess that's maybe. I think there's just something about keeping the peace that, although I don't really feel like there's much peace. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I do think I've moved away from that. I still like to watch the news a lot. I watch politics. I know what I don't believe mostly, and I know a lot of things I think are true that I'm pursuing, but I'm starting to argue with people less. I wouldn't say I don't ever do it. But for one thing, religion is just so boring. Theology is boring. Well, you should really interpret that verse this way. Well, they've done that for 1,500 years,
right,
and it hasn't gotten anywhere. And politics anymore, I would say, especially the far right, when they see, like, for instance, if they see Biden doing something good, well, there has to be an excuse for him doing good. It's so divided like that.
Yeah.
And they will disbelieve all of the accusations against Trump. They'll believe more about him than is true. And then they'll make up stuff about, and people don't have a problem with that anymore. So it's really hard to talk about religion and politics with people, and you really don't ever get very far with that. So I'm trying to pull myself away from trying to convince people, and just I think I got a lot more positive feedback and a lot more self assurance from helping these women amplify their voices. That's been fun and exciting and different for me. And I didn't have to argue with anybody about it.
Yeah. So, any closing words? I was going to say, what would you put on your billboard, since you ask everybody that?
I don't know. I guess I'm 2 months away from, or a month away from the 2-year anniversary of my stroke. So
just a month.
Doing a lot of thinking about that. I think if people, if we would all do the work to deal with our trauma, then I think we're going to get to the right answers philosophically or theologically, intuitively. If we'll learn to belong to ourselves, like you say, to ourselves first, then we'll belong everywhere. We won't have to try to fit in. If we quit thinking that, well, maybe I just need to find the right belief system.
Or the right church.
Or the right church. Or the right club. Or whatever. We talk about this quite often. I say, be where you are and be who you are. Being where you are is being present, but being who you are is being authentic.
Right.
And I see the people stumbling out here in the desert are the people who don't know who they are.
Well, yeah.
And you have such an identity crisis when you come out of the church. That's got to be one of the first jobs is, who am I?
Right.
And when you know that kind of deep inside you, like some of the gurus say, it's not your body, it's not your mind, it's you. The you that's your isness. Who is that? What is that? What's that about? And I think if we wanted to spend some time contemplating that.
Yeah.
Because the people who know who they are have a much greater impact than those that are reinventing themselves every 5 days.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, and
was that the question you asked?
Yeah. Well, I said, what would you put on your billboard? But
yeah,
you don't have to have. I mean, I think that's a hard question, but
yeah, it is.
If you have something in particular you want to share,
well, I just always say, be where you are, be who you are, and be at peace.
Yeah.
So far, that's taken me years to mine, and I'm still mining that. So I'll stick with that. Yeah,
that sounds good. Well, it's been good to hear your story, and I always feel like stories are. Well, we've always said stories are sacred, and stories put you in a vulnerable position because sometimes some parts of our stories are hard to bring forward. But I do feel like it gives people more of a glimpse into who you are. So I think that's good. And I do hope that everybody has by the time this gets out there, the holidays will be over. So I do hope that everybody's had the holiday that best, brings them joy, whatever that is.
I really encourage people to look at the leaning forward stuff. The job that those women did is so great, and they came at it from so many different angles. It's just almost like a complete picture. Speaking of religious trauma, patriarchy, how we can move forward, and so on. But those will be in February. Will be on podcasts. They're on YouTube. They're You go to our website, thedesertsanctuary.org, and look at the page that shows all the videos. There's some meditations there. There's some resources for those that experience trauma. And really, if people would just look up those 9 people that we had on the program, there's probably one of them that could help you in your struggle.
Yeah. And I think, too, that, share those. I think there's so many times that I'm even afraid to share things like that because I'm like, oh, no one I know is going through anything like that. And then I get on, Facebook, and not necessarily my immediate, friends or whatever, but, I hear so many stories of people that have been through religious trauma. And yeah, it's just, so I would just encourage people to listen and then share, because there's just something about, one of the things we talk about when we first first started deconstructing and left the church and everything, was just how alone it felt. And it doesn't feel like there's any community, but there is so much community out there. And these 9 women are part of that community. And they bring such healing and such hope.
Yeah, it's good. One of them was you.
Okay, 8 women.
No, it's definitely true. Yours is very valuable.
I spoke from a pastor's wife perspective.
I'd say if you're someone out there that thinks, the church is a necessary part of the future, we personally don't identify as Christian anymore, and we don't go to church. But I'm okay with people, still thinking that the organized religion could be part of the solution, but only, just like we're talking about men that come out and then become pseudo-pastors out here in the desert. It's got to stop long enough to do the work to heal.
Right.
If it doesn't, then it keeps, it's wounded, and it keeps wounding other people. And we're never going to do it till we stop. And probably a big part of that with leaning forward is listening to the women. And they said over and over, stop interrupting us and listen to us. We know something, and we need you, but you need us too. So,
the church has created, in my opinion, a lot of us versus them, and one of the us versus them is men versus women. And, who has more importance, and it's definitely not been the women.
Yeah.
So
we need to listen to them.
Yeah, for sure. I think everybody has a voice, and it needs to be heard. It needs to be respected. It needs to be valued and validated. So, and women have not been heard and validated for a very long time, and I think it's time that we do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy holidays from us out in the desert here. We just really appreciate your list. The stats were all up for the Desert Sanctuary last year, and we're excited about that. Got a lot of episodes already in the can, ready to go. So we appreciate you listening. But as always, be where you are, be who you are, and be at peace.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary podcast.
Remember, all who wander in the desert are not lost.
We believe all of our stories are sacred.
We are always here if you need someone to hear your story.
Check out our blog on Pathos and also our YouTube channel.
And stay tuned for our Leaning Forward conference.
Remember, we love you.
And be at peace.